When I get homesick now, I'm homesick for Ethiopia.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't right away.
Chiro or pisto from Spain?
Oh, pisto is nice. Wow, you're good at this.
So the overseas was really like wherever it is.
It was like anywhere.
Okay. Lived in Burundi, Ethiopia, and now Greece. Born down in Burundi. Like what the...
You want the fire story?
Yeah, I want the fire story.
The working culture. And Burundian work culture is more similar to US work culture. It's direct, hierarchical, blah, blah, blah.
Nightlife.
I don't know. I'm 45.
Welcome to Expat Experts. Today, I'm joined by Kelly Hauser, a passionate humanitarian and expat who lived in multiple continents. Originally from the United States, Kelly lived in Brazil, Spain, Burundi, Ethiopia, and now in Greece. With a background in NGO and development work, in this episode, Kelly shares with us her international journey and challenges, from studying abroad to working in challenging environments, and finally choosing Greece as a more stable and safe place to live. So sit back, relax, and let's explore this expat experience together.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of Expat Experts, recording again from Athens, episode 3 of this second season, with the new structure, with the new ways. Again, recording live with audience here, so really happy to have you all around here, guys. Thank you for coming. And of course, having a new guest, and I'm really happy to have you here, Kelly. Welcome to the show. To the
Thanks,
podcast.
Mark. Happy to be here. I hope I can provide some insight to your audience that's helpful to them.
I'm pretty sure, like knowing a little bit of your life, like it's one of the biggest parts that I don't know how to start. You know, like you lived in so many countries, like and maybe just like. We start from the beginning. You are originally from the US.
Mm-hmm.
Where exactly?
I was born in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and I also lived during my childhood in Jacksonville, Florida. For the Americans listening, you know, those are very different places. Yeah. So it was kind of like moving to a different country.
So Washington is where you live and Florida is where you retire? Or...
Not exactly. Jacksonville is actually in the northeast part of Florida.
So it doesn't even have
kind
retirement.
Of the south, as they call it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So it's not even good for retiring. Okay, I get it. You lived in Brazil, Spain for some time for studies, also Brazil for studies, Burundi, Ethiopia, now Greece.
Yes.
So that's 5 countries on the go so far. How this whole thing started? Like it was a dream of you of living abroad, or it's something that it happened?
That's a good question. I think from early on, I was very interested in the entire world and not just my country and what was in front of me. I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents had a coffee table that had a globe in the center, and I would just spin it and be like, okay, that's where I'm going to live when I grow up.
So that's how Burundi appeared.
No, actually, when I interviewed for the job in Burundi, I had to Google, where is Burundi?
I mean,
yeah,
I get it. It's not the most common country in Africa either. Like, it's just like, okay, when you say Ethiopia, you can more or less place it, or like you've heard from it before. But maybe before that, I know that you first time living abroad was due to studies. It was Spain or Brazil? Madrid. Mm-hmm. So when did that happen? Like, what is the moment of...
So with Spain, I didn't originally... I had a family vacation to Mexico when I think I was 19 or 20. And there was a little bit of family drama. We split ways for a few days and then came back together. And during the few days I was apart, I met so many lovely Mexican people and made just really quick friends. And I started speaking some Spanish and I fell in love with the language and the culture. And so when I went back to the US, I enrolled in the Spanish classes at the university. And that's what started my journey on foreign languages. And I wanted to study abroad to improve my Spanish in Chile. For some reason, I chose Chile. It was just like this random to me, it was this faraway place with a huge desert and some
earthquakes.
Earthquakes. And I wanted to do that. I had a Chilean Spanish professor. She said, no, you have to go to the original, the origin of the Spanish language, to Spain. I said, okay, well.
And you went to Madrid.
I went to Madrid. I don't know if that's the
most populated with South American immigrant cities
nowadays,
in whole Spain. Yes,
but so I'm maybe a few years older than you, Mark. I know that. A decade and a half older. So back then, in 25 years ago, Madrid was not so full of immigrants. It was very different, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because I went back for the first time last year on sort of a nostalgia tour. And I know that was the number one thing I noticed was different.
Yeah, I mean, there was tourism, but there was not much more of what we call now expats, or like immigrants who move from one country to the other. I don't know if in other places of Europe and United States for sure, like the whole immigration started much earlier. I think Spain kicks a little bit later also because our recent history that it's not that far away. So we were not really open.
There's an ocean between the two.
And a dictatorship fascist one that it's also dividing things a little bit more also.
Yeah. Like, closed borders, etc.
And the fact that we colonized half of South America, and I don't think that it's the most lovely thing to do either, so as a culture, but yeah.
No, of course not.
And so for how long were you in Madrid then?
I was in Madrid for 8 months.
Okay.
And I was very much focused on the study of the language. I had a Spanish boyfriend, which was very interesting. I lived with a Spanish family for a few months as well, also very interesting.
Nice.
There's a lot of stories there, but I won't.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
When does Brazil comes into this whole thing? Like, because you also went to Brazil, you lived in Brazil afterwards as an expat, but you also studied there, or
I didn't actually study. I did an intensive Portuguese class. I guess that's studying, but not formal studies. Okay. So after one of my friends in university, she studied Portuguese and then moved to Brazil for an internship after university. Fell in love, got married there. A group of us went down for the wedding. I fell in love with the culture, with the music, and when I went back to Washington D.C., where I had been living at the time, I enrolled in Portuguese classes and started doing some remote volunteer work and met a community that way that was based in Brazil. And after a couple of years, I was working at an accounting firm. I was traveling around the US doing audits for labor unions. And so that was kind of exciting, but it was kind of boring as well. And the travel was nice, the work, not so exciting. And I had sort of a quarter life crisis, I would call it. And
quarter life crisis.
Yeah, quarter life crisis. I said, you know what? I just need to do something that for me, I felt like I had a lot of pressure to make money, save money, succeed, kind of like this success paradigm that I think a lot of people, at least in my home country, have. And I realized I wasn't doing it for me. I was kind of doing it just because I thought I should be financially secure, etc. And so I had a panic attack on an airplane between DC and Dallas. And I was like, wow, I'm doing all of this. I called my dad later and he was just like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you should do something for yourself. Like, if this isn't what you want, it's okay, you're right. And so I quit my job, broke up with my boyfriend, which you have to do before you go to Brazil. And then I went to sorry.
Was still the Spanish boyfriend?
No, it was not still the Spanish boyfriend. But I got in touch with, I was already in touch with an organization in Bahia, in the northeast of Brazil. And I was already speaking Portuguese, which is quite easy if you already speak Spanish. And I got the 6-month tourist visa and I moved there and I enrolled in a Portuguese class. I did an intensive Portuguese class for a month, which was great. And I did some volunteer work at a women's music school, and I helped friends with different projects, etc. And it was a really great experience, I would say. Yeah, it was a break that I needed, after working for 3.5 years. I'm a strong believer in enjoying life while we're young and not just waiting until, retirement, which was the expectation I grew up with. You work really hard, and then when you're 65, you stop work and you enjoy life. Then you relax, you travel, and all of this, which with this, like I see now with my dad and my stepmother, they do this, but they're 75. They can't walk long distances. They can't see, if you want to see the world, I feel like the time to do it is when you're young or middle-aged. Like older, yeah, you can still do it, but you're not going to have the same mobility, most likely.
Of course. It makes it difficult.
Yeah, it does. But I think a lot of people don't think about it that way, or they get locked into this. I don't know. There's lots of different scenarios that people get locked in.
Of course, but at the end, it's also what you were saying. You're coming with a stigma or like a society pressure or like family pressures of being inside of this, I don't know, stable job, easy money, like having savings, buying a house, routine,
taking the next step each time. Yeah.
And if you are focused on that, you cannot be focused on discovering. Maybe sometimes. You touched one point though that it was interesting, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that, and it's the whole volunteering world and volunteering work that you've been doing. And I know that you work also in Africa and in multiple NGOs and everything. Was that the moment that you discovered that you like that? It's really your passion, or where does the whole volunteering approach work?
That's a really interesting question, because even when I was in Washington, D.C., I was doing not necessarily volunteer work, but my work has always had sort of a social mission. So with labor unions, I mean, that's quasi-social, I would say. And then the first job I had wasn't so much, but I guess it's a good question. I think in my family, there's always been a sense of you should be contributing to the world, and you should be contributing to society, like a sense of social and civic responsibility. Like a lot of my family is in government or medicine, and so it's sort of that I think it's just like a value that I have, and I've continued with in the work that I did in Brazil wasn't, I don't know if it was a turning point. It wasn't that fulfilling, to be honest. To be perfectly honest. I mean, I was like a couple evenings a week, like helping women learn some English. It wasn't, I wasn't terribly like, I mean, I think learning a foreign languages is important in helping people, but I don't know. I think, to really be engaged in something and to get fulfillment from that, like a longer period of time and deeper engagement is, for me, it's what is necessary. But yeah, it did get me started. Actually, it was great for my CV. I mean, if we want to be honest, like it was really good, because then I had this international thing on my CV. It's not why I did it, but in retrospect, it helped me get my next job in international policy work. And then it helps me later on get the job in Burundi that I had and start working in international development, because you can't do it without.
So you came back, you came back to the United States.
Yeah,
between Brazil and Burundi, you didn't go from Brazil to Burundi.
No, from Brazil. So after.
Sounds like a song title. So from Brazil to Burundi would be a very good reggae song. Sorry.
From Brazil to. So when my visa expired in Brazil, and I returned to the U.S., but I really wanted to return. I really wanted to go back to. I wanted to emigrate to Brazil because I loved it, and. So I was like, okay, I will. But then I was like, well, I want to go backpacking in Southeast Asia for a couple of months first before I settle down somewhere. So I was working at a bar. Anyways, I fell into, through a friend, I fell into an internship at an NGO, a big international NGO in DC, because I had data analysis skills. So that was very useful for them in their research and policy analysis department. So I started with that, and I was pretty good at it. I was like fast writer, etc. So I kind of stayed in that field for about 5 years in DC. And I didn't end up immigrating to Brazil, but I did go on the backpacking trip to Southeast Asia, and for 2 months, which was really cool. And then after about I did the policy thing, the international policy thing. But after about 5 years, I was I was writing a lot about African agriculture in the end. I was an expert in African agriculture, but I had never worked in African agriculture in Africa. I mean, that's how the international policy stuff works. And so that wasn't very satisfying to me. I like the process of writing. I love the research process, but that aspect of it wasn't. So I started looking, and I always knew from when I finished university, I knew I wanted to live overseas. So I started looking for jobs, and I had a partner for I had a boyfriend for 3 months or so, and I basically told him hey, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to move overseas. Are you in? Are you out? And he said, oh, well, I want an interesting life. Sure, let's do it. So
3 months in.
After 3 months in, because it was basically hey, we either end this now or let's embark on this. So it was pretty quick.
Did he know where Burundi was, though?
Well, it took me about 6 months. I think it took me about.
Okay.
Yeah, it took a while to find the job in Burundi, and we did live together before we moved. But I was looking at jobs in China, teaching English in China, or a few.
So the overseas was really wherever it is.
It was anywhere.
Okay.
And I remember we had this piece of paper, and we were just writing down the names of countries. Would you live there? Okay, yeah, I'd live there. Oh, there? What about there? I mean, this is this whole brainstorming process. But in the end, you're just if you need a job, you're just applying for jobs that you find. It's
clearly in the piece of paper, Burundi was not there. No?
Burundi was not on the paper. Yeah, neither was Ethiopia. I mean, Senegal was, South Africa, the countries that you've heard of in Africa that are they're somehow alluring or whatnot. But I think, I loved Burundi. I really, really loved it.
How did you end in Burundi? What is the process for an American to request a job in Burundi? And what is the process to get accepted to the job and ending being there?
I wrote a letter to the president. I'm just kidding. No, was
back in the day. The U.S. president or the Burundi one?
No, the Burundi president. No, I started asking everybody in my network that worked for large NGOs, because I wanted to continue in the NGO field. If they had work, if they had jobs, or basically saying, okay, I know these people. Let me check the website of the organizations they work for, see if they have any interesting open jobs, then go approach the people. So I did it that way. And the organization I found, it was called the 1 Acre Fund. I worked for them for 11 years. I knew basically their policy person. And so she said, yeah, let's talk. I'll set you up with an interview and blah, blah, blah. And so it worked like that. And then they were more interested in my finance experience and accounting experience at the beginning, to be honest. And the first job I got, the job I had in Burundi was finance and managing the loan database. So it wasn't exactly what you think of NGO work, where you're just helping people or doing these program things. It was very much in the administration and very technical behind the computer, but working with the team. It was. I lived in a little, not a village, a town of about 20,000 people. The organization provided housing, and then on the weekends I'd go down to the capital and do the things you do in capital cities, and that was kind of the life for a couple of years.
What was the first impression that you had when you arrived to Burundi from US?
When I arrived to Burundi from the US, so I had been to Africa a few times already. So I think that, and also I went via Senegal because I did a quick intensive French program to brush up on my French, which I had studied in university or in high school. And I visited also for an interview. So I had been there. But it's an incredibly poor country. It ranks at the, when you have these lists of countries by statistics, it's always down there with Niger, for example, for poverty levels, Somalia for like the efficacy of the state, this sort of thing. So it's one of the poorest countries in the world where people are the farmers. I think the average income per capita is something like 150 euros per year. It's extremely, extremely poor. And it's hard to imagine that. I remember I'm not sure what I can say about my profession. I don't talk about my profession. Don't talk about myself much. And I'm wondering, like, what can I say? What can I say?
Avoid that you get anyone saying anything to you. That's the policy. But in that sense, like you just did the interview, pass the interview, and they tell you like in 1 month you need to be here. It's
a negotiation process. So I think I can't remember. Maybe it was a month or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your boyfriend back then?
He stayed in the US for 4 months and then he followed me later.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after a few months, he got a job at a coffee company in Burundi. And his story is more interesting. He had never traveled to a developing country before, to Africa or anything like that. And so he was in shock. The first 2 weeks, he was like, wow, cool, da-da-da-da-da. But then it kind of set in. He was in this little town. He didn't have anything to do. I came home from work one day and he was staring at the wall, staring at the wall on the bed, like, and I was like, and going like this on the other wall. I was like, John, are you, is everything okay? I was like, I think we need to work harder to find you a job or something. So, being a following spouse, I don't know if you've had this, you or your partner.
I followed my partner here, but
yeah,
I work remote.
But you work remotely, so it's different. But to follow somebody and this was before the era of remote work. Also, we didn't have internet at our house at that time. We had there was a satellite dish at the country director's place. But yeah, he was a bit in shock upon arrival, I think, with just that there's not that much to do if you're not working.
And you were not? Like
I was.
I'm surprised also because it's culturally wise. It's
for me, I was just thrown into the deep end of work. There was like a huge backlog of work because they hadn't had the position filled for a few months. And so at the beginning, I was working so many hours. I think I was working like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week or something. It was very intense. And that's actually like with NGO work, if you work for a medium or large size NGO, a lot of times it's a very intense work schedule, especially in we weren't in a humanitarian context or like a war context, but in those contexts, people are working like crazy hours. It's not volunteer work. Yeah, it's not volunteer work.
When does Ethiopia comes on all of this? Like when in this timing, it's difficult to put the timeline, no? Like how much time you stayed in Burundi? When did you move? Why did you move to Ethiopia?
After 2 years in Burundi, so I had signed a 2-year contract essentially, and after 2 years, we wanted to move to a bigger city where we could both live in we could live in a bigger city. And so I found a transfer internally at the organization I was with and moved to Bahir Dar, Ethiopia, which is the town of somewhere between 300 and 500,000 people, depending on the census, the estimate. But still rather agricultural and about an hour flight from Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia.
How different is the life between Burundi and Ethiopia, if you can compare it? Because this is something that probably us as Europeans or people from the United States, you don't have a reference, and you know about difference between Italy and France and whatever other countries, or like a state or another. But in Africa, if you've never been there, you don't know.
Yeah, I think on a superficial level, they probably look very similar at first glance, but except for the clothing and whatnot. But once you dive into the cultures a bit, very, very, very different. I think the biggest differences for me, and I spent most of my day in the workplace, was the working culture. And Burundian work culture is more similar to US work culture. It's direct, hierarchical, blah, blah, blah. In Ethiopia, it's very different. It's people prefer decision by consensus. Everybody really needs to be heard. It's more horizontal. Like it's not horizontal. The power structures are hidden. I mean, it's a whole. Anyways, I won't get into that. But it's also it's a beautiful country. I mean, I think Ethiopia is a wonderful place to visit in terms of culture and also terrain, etc. Because it's a very old Christianity. In the Bible, Abyssinia is Ethiopia, and so you have a lot of just like deep Christian Orthodox traditions from a long time ago. You also have a large Muslim population. It's very diverse. It's a huge country. Burundi has 10 million people. It's about the size of Greece, but smaller. And then Ethiopia has 120 million or so, and like 50 languages. Burundi has one language. Ethiopia has, I think it's 2,700 millionaires, something like that. It's the latest figure. So and there's there's the robust like middle and upper class. So actually, as an expat in Africa, one thing that I think I really liked about Ethiopia is that there are a lot of Ethiopians with money. So like when you go to nice restaurants, etc., like for international food, it's not just white people. Essentially, you have like Ethiopians. So you have more chance to, I think, meet people. And then, of course, if you go to local restaurants, you find the local people always, which is, I think, nice because Ethiopia, I think it's different from a lot of African countries in that way.
When it comes to meet people, like in both Burundi and Ethiopia, what is the common approach? I mean, you are a foreigner there. You're clearly white. You are out of context sometimes, probably. You need to adapt to a culture that you don't understand, a language that probably it's not even close to anything that you have heard before. How do you meet people? How do you, like, especially with the locals, how do you relate with them?
So my strategy for meeting people has been more around activities. I like to have community around activities. In Burundi, I had one thing I was missing in my life there in general was community. I had friends, and good friends I'm still friends with today, but they were kind of one-on-one friends. And I didn't have, other than at my office, my job, we had a nice work community. I didn't have a community. In Ethiopia, one thing that I did that was really great for my social life in the first few years is I created a trail running group. So every Sunday afternoon, we'd go for a run. We'd go to different places close to the city and then go for juice or beer or dinner or whatever afterwards. And that was wonderful. Like it was a mix of Ethiopians and foreigners. And I made some very good friends that way. And I mean, I knew them before. Everybody in the group was an acquaintance, but it was once you have that kind of regularity and you're doing things together, it's really nice. I think also learning some of the local language, other people on your shows have probably said this, learning the local language is really important. Even if you just get to like the A1 level, it shows so much respect and so much enthusiasm, and people really like that.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak a lot of languages poorly. I speak 6 languages poorly.
Okay.
In English, like, okay.
What languages did you learn in Burundi and Ethiopia? Like what are
So in Burundi, the national language is Kirundi. So I was able to probably like A1 level Kirundi, like I could get by, with buying things and taking taxis and stuff like that. And then, but I could understand a lot because with work, I was exposed to a lot. So I understood a lot of agricultural language. I could go to farmer meetings and understand what was going on, like the main idea. But if the first thing that my team taught me to say in Kirundi was dutahe.
My gosh.
We could say it at the end, dutahe.
Dutahe?
Dutahe.
Dutahe.
It means let's go home.
It's better than I expected.
Smart crew. No.
I was expecting something worse. Cool. How many years then did you spend in Ethiopia? Like
I was 7 years in Ethiopia.
Doing the same work, or it was like
the same organization.
Mm-hmm.
And my work evolved over time, and after a couple of years, I became the country director. So I was managing everything that was happening in the country. So it was a little bit of all of the different departments that you can imagine and programs and stuff. So I really loved that job. That was wonderful. And
you still had the boyfriend there? Sorry.
He was there for about a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
He came to Ethiopia
He came to Ethiopia, yeah.
Never did the next step.
He was working remotely, but yeah, the next step didn't work out for us.
Okay.
Yeah. But
what's the next step was Greece?
No, I mean, I don't know. I was referring to the next step we were
in
talking
general.
to earlier. Yeah.
Hey. And
but the Amharic language, I learned to speak Amharic with a very limited vocabulary to say a lot. Because when you're in a place for a while, you just get good at using the words that you know. And
it's a lot of years.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of years. Yeah, so I could have like a 20-minute conversation with a taxi driver from the airport to my house. But like if we had gone, to like my friend's house 10 minutes further, I don't know. Because you have that same introductory conversation over and over. Yeah.
Where are you from? What are you doing here?
Yeah, you have sisters, like do what you work. Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
When does coming here comes in this whole, where is the moment in your life that you say, I lived in Burundi, Ethiopia, and now Greece?
Greece is kind of off to the side. It's a good question. So it was a process. I loved my job. I eventually moved to the capital, to Addis Ababa, and there was COVID. There was the war, the Tigray war, which some of you might know about, and there was a regime change, then there was the COVID, then there was the war. And I think at some point, also I was in the country director role for about 5 years. And to me, that seemed about sufficient. I was starting to get a little bit bored. It's like the same problems, you solve them or you just manage them, but like you're managing the same stuff. So I wanted to change professionally. I was like, okay, if I'm going to change professionally, I might as well change countries, because I'm getting after 7 years in a place, you really start to like take on, you change quite a bit. You start to change quite a bit. And I was like, okay, do I want to stay in Ethiopia forever? Because I'll keep changing. It'll accelerate, or do I want to, break out and do something else? And I think I had a lot of stress built up just from like the war, insecure environment, etc. So I wanted to go somewhere safe, make a change, And so I put in a year's notice, and I was lucky. In some ways, I was lucky that I couldn't fill my position during that year. So I said, okay, I'll continue, but I want to work remotely. And they said, fine, you can work remotely until we find somebody, and then you can train them, blah, blah, blah. And so I remember one morning I just woke up. I made a list of possible countries. I wanted to live in Europe or the Mediterranean. I made a list of the countries, a list of my criteria across the top, and scored them on these different criteria. And then I made a short list of 5 countries. And then when I went to work remotely, I visited all 5 countries, different cities that were appealing to me. And Greece had been number 1 on the list of places, but I wasn't sure. But then I came to visit, and I loved Athens. I found it really easy to meet people. And I just like the vibe of the city. There's always people outside on the streets, like I visited in September, which is a great time of year for Athens. Yeah, they're probably the best. There's music everywhere, festivals. And I said, okay, this is, and it's safe. It's very safe. So I felt like it was a place that I could, I continued to travel. And then I said, I'm tired of traveling. I really hated the digital nomad, move every 2 weeks, the kind of lifestyle. So I was like, just somebody get me back to Athens. So I came back, and that's how I made the decision.
How long have you been here?
I've been here for 2 years now. Yeah.
Maybe a couple of questions before we close the call. I have thousands of questions, to be honest, but time-wise, I just need to close a little bit. You lived in a lot of places. What of these countries has resembled more like feeling home, like so far, like something that it's like inside of you that you say, okay, that's my place?
I mean, when I get homesick now, I'm homesick for Ethiopia.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't right away. Ethiopia was actually the hardest country for me to get used to living in. When I arrived to Ethiopia, to Bahir Dar, I was like, I can't find milk. Where do I buy milk? So you need to know somebody with a cow. I know somebody with a cow. I mean, it was, and then also in Ethiopia, they have a different time system. So it's like 6 hours different. The day starts like 6 a.m. is 0, or it's 12. 6 a.m. is 12.
Okay.
So you always have to specify like international time or Ethiopian time for meetings and stuff. And I remember I was very excited a colleague invited me to New Year's, Ethiopian New Year's, which by the way is September 11th.
Which is at 6 a.m. also? Or?
No, he said 3. The party's at 3. Come to my house at 3. I said, okay, great. And then at like 11 in the morning, he called me and he's like, Kelly, where are you? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm at home. I'm having coffee. He was like, it was 3, like 9 in the morning was 3 their time. So, I mean, there's just all of this. It's a very, very unique place. It was so hard to really get into, but once you're deep in it, you're kind of in this secret. Well, it's not so secret. 120 million people, but it's a
lifestyle, no?
Yeah, different. It's a very different lifestyle. It's a different world, and and I mean the food is totally different, and the rhythm of life. One thing it has in common with Greece is the coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Maybe last question. Biggest challenge that you have living abroad? Like, what is the most difficult thing for you of living abroad and living in different countries and moving from every now and then?
At the beginning, the biggest challenge was feeling a sense of belonging. So in Burundi, I had quite a bit of anxiety, not when I was at work, but after work, I had quite a bit of anxiety, I think, because I didn't have this like a community, like I mentioned. And so I kind of had to learn how to build that. And that was like for myself, which was something really, I think, really important that I learned. And I would say that was the biggest challenge, but it's not anymore. Now I living outside the US is not, Greece is so nice. It's so easy.
Nice.
Yeah. The language, of course, is tricky.
If you could give a life hack, an advice, a tip to anyone who needs to emigrate or go out or like become an expat in the countries that you live, but also in general, if you have something more generic.
For people that haven't decided yet or people that have decided?
I don't know.
I would...
Have decided maybe?
Yeah, I would probably just what I said a minute ago. I think the community is really important, and not being afraid to reach out to other people. Because I've met expats here in Greece and elsewhere who kind of stay at home and they get lonely, right? And I think it's important to remember that everybody nobody's going to be offended if you invite them somewhere. You know, most likely they're going to be happy. If they don't like you, they might be like 1% annoyed, but who cares? And I think reaching out to people and building community and just kind of being brave in that sense is probably, I think, the life hack I would give. I don't know if that's really a life hack, but
it's your own life hack, and that's good enough. No, I suppose I take it also, like I get it.
Hey there, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Remember that the best way to stay tuned with the latest episodes of the podcast is by clicking on subscribe in YouTube and in your favorite audio platform. For extra content and information, follow, like, and comment on our social media and visit our website, expatexpertspodcast.com. Thank you for supporting our podcast, and let's continue with the episode.
I would like to jump to the next section, and I'm pretty afraid of it because you speak very different languages that I don't speak at all, for example, and that will be funny, I suppose, or I would be very, very roasted in the comments because I don't pronounce anything properly. But I want to do a little bit of like game but cultural deep dive, let's say like this, trying to discover a little bit of the culture, languages, foods, drinks, and everything that comes with the countries that you lived in. And for that, I want to propose you a couple of mini games, as I call them, starting with one that I called Guess That Phrase. And basically, in the Guess That Phrase, I will test your language skills and my language skills because I need to pronounce it. So the dynamic is pretty simple. Like, I took phrases on the original languages of the countries that you lived in, and I would like you to guess what they mean or what you can translate that into English. Let's start with a maybe easy one. Greek. Όλα το γάμο δύσκολα. Do you know this one?
All of the marriages are difficult.
Correct. Wow. Not bad. 2 years here. So it was, when as soon as I switched to Oromo or Kirundi or all of that, that will be the next level because I don't pronounce it properly, no? All of them are paraphrases, of course, and they are like more or less known sentences. Oh. In Oromo, they say Odo hin kabatin hin tukin.
I don't speak any Oromo.
Can you guess?
No. I can. Oromo language, I know when it's Oromo because there's always like a lot of vowels that repeat. So it's I,
crazy.
A lot of ya, like y.
I have pronounced it very bad, probably anyway. But Odo hin kabatin hin tukin. It's not even like closer to any other of the languages that you learned in Ethiopia. No, it means don't touch what you cannot handle. Up to you. Brazilian Portuguese. Ficar do queixo caído.
Oh, wait, ficar.
Ficar de queixo caído.
Stay with the cheese that fell, like fall into old cheese?
Not queso, queixo.
Queixo.
Queixo. X.
Like the complaints that you're something.
It means to be jaw-dropping surprise when your mouth goes like.
Ficar de queixo caído. Okay.
Kirundi you learned.
I know, I never took a class in Kirundi.
But you speak with taxi drivers.
No, that was Amharic.
Amharic.
I mean, I can speak I used to, 10 years ago, I could speak where to go.
Okay. Then
how many tomatoes I want to buy, what price.
I don't know if it's skipping this one because it's even difficult to pronounce for myself.
Try it.
Uwutazi ikimuhana arabumwa.
You have to say like ikimuhana. There's tones.
Ikimuhana aramuwa. Yeah, I don't have the tonalities here.
I don't either.
And it basically means, it translates directly to, he who doesn't know what lies beyond his home is cursed. And it's meaning that the ignorance of the world outside your own environment might be harmful to you.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense, no?
Yeah, no, it is for sure. I mean, it's a country of hills, right? Burundi has a ton of hills and villages that are really, there's a lot of really remote places, although it has a good deal of roads, but yeah.
Okay, nice. In Amharic, Belaste Tebel. You know this?
Belaste Tebel. No.
Carry the burden on your head. I come from the Tete of French into this, but I don't think it's coming from that at all. So.
Carry the burden on your head, which means?
It's just like taking care of your own responsibilities, I suppose.
Okay.
In that sense. And now the only one that I can properly pronounce, Más vale tarde que nunca.
It's better now than never.
Yay.
Finally.
Finally, I can pronounce something that you can understand. Cool. For the next game, I would like to suggest you a quick top country 4, let's say like this. So I will tell you a couple of topics or things, and I would like you to tell me which of the countries that you lived in has the best of that one.
Okay.
Starting with coffee.
Ethiopia. The origin of coffee, by the way.
Cultural festivals.
Oh, Brazil. Come on.
Live music.
Oh, that's hard because every country has like their own. Okay, wait.
That you go there and you can enjoy in live, not cultural music in general, but concert-wise.
It's either Ethiopia or Brazil. Oh, or wait, you mean the local music or the cultural music or just live music?
The scene of being able to go and enjoy music.
I mean, Brazil.
Street food.
In Brazil.
Lifestyle.
Greece.
Welcoming people.
Burundi.
Resilient people.
Brazilian people.
Resilient.
Resilient Ethiopia.
Country for doing sports.
Greece.
Security as a woman.
Greece.
Nature.
I think Brazil.
City vibes.
City vibes. Greece.
Nightlife.
I don't know. I'm 45 now. I don't know. I mean, let's just focus on my experience. I think my night at Brazil, back when I was 28, I think I had the best night.
Yeah, that's not a fair question. It's true. Flirting and dating, another one that it's probably not.
Flirting and dating.
Burundi is out because of a boyfriend.
I have no experience. Zero experience flirting and dating in Burundi. Yeah. Ethiopian guys are very nice. Greece. Flirting and dating at Brazil. Come on. Let's go to Brazil. Might also have to do with age too. I mean, when you're 28, all of that's much more fun.
Kindness.
Kindness. Oh. I would have to say Ethiopia.
And the last one, beer.
Beer. I mean, the U.S. We left off the U.S., but come on, the U.S. we have like so many great craft beers.
Nice. I have a last game for today, which is going food-wise, and I needed to do a lot of research on this one because what the fuck, like how many countries you live in and how many dishes I don't know. Like, I call it Food Fusion Face Off, and it's rather a simple this or that game. So it's a versus one food dish versus the other, and I mixed foods from all the countries that you've been or you lived in, including the United States, of course. And I would like to find what wins at the end of this round.
What I prefer.
Yes.
Okay.
We start with going to Spain with tortilla.
Oh, it's nice.
Versus spanakopita from Greece.
Wow. Tortilla.
Tortilla versus Brazilian acai bowl.
Oh, I'm in a healthy mood right now, so I'll say acai.
Acai versus mac and cheese from United States.
I'm still feeling healthy. I think I'll acai. It's a very good. That's delicious one.
Makes sense.
But mac and cheese is fucking good.
Well, that's the whole point of the game. For the Ethiopians and Burundi dishes, especially, if you don't know what it is, just take. It's okay.
I'll correct your pronunciation. Don't worry, I'll know.
Take the previous one, and that's all. Acai or misirvot from Ethiopia.
Misirvot, 100%.
Okay. It's a spicy lentil stew seasoned with berbere spice and served with injera.
Yeah, injera is the Ethiopian. It's like I don't want to say flatbread, but it's kind of a big pancake, but it's a fermented spongy bread. And the food is served on top of it, and it is both your bread and your utensils. You can buy it here in Athens. And Messerwat.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Misirvot from Ethiopia or ugali from Burundi?
Messerwat.
Misirvot from Ethiopia or patatas bravas from Spain?
Messerwat.
Misirvot or an American burger?
Messerwat.
Misirvot or fasolada from Greece?
Messerwat. More healthy.
Misirvot or shiro from Ethiopia?
Shiro.
Shiro from Ethiopia or pau de queijo from Brazil?
Ooh, very different. Shiro.
Shiro or horiatiki from Greece?
Shiro.
Shiro or plantains from Burundi?
It depends. It really depends on how they're cooked. So I'm going to say the average shiro is better than the average bananas. The shiro.
Shiro or grilled cheese sandwich from United States?
Ooh, that's like the ultimate comfort food. I'm going to still go with shiro.
Okay. Shiro or pisto from Spain?
Oh, pisto is nice. Wow, you're good at this. You could be like my own personal like restaurant menu designer. Pisto. Does the pisto have an egg in it?
Of course. Always.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just so loyal to the shiro. I can't. I get the shiro. Yeah.
Shiro or Brazilian farofa?
Ugh. Fried flour. I'm gonna go with shiro.
I had to try.
No offense to the Brazilians out there, but it's not a meal.
Shiro or Ethiopian injera.
No, but shiro has injera. It's served with injera.
Shiro or dolmades from Greek. Yes. Ooh, dolmades is perfect in Ethiopia. That's interesting.
I like dolmades. I like dolmades a lot.
Okay.
But shiro I can eat every day.
So shiro. Shiro or cornbread?
Shiro.
Shiro or gazpacho?
Oh, gazpacho is nice too. I could eat gazpacho every day too. Can I have shiro with a side of gazpacho?
We can do that. So Ethiopia Spanish combination as the winners. Shiro with, by the way, it's a chickpea stew with.
It's like a chickpea flour and then the spices, yeah.
And gazpacho on the side on that for whatever reason.
Course one, gazpacho. Course two, shiro.
Cool. So with that, I would say that I can ask you a couple of questions from the audience that has sent questions to us.
All right.
For you. So I have a question from Emina. Do you have the feeling of missing out on stuff that people experience who are settled down in a country and don't move so frequently as you did?
Yeah, I think the thing I miss out on has to do is the same reason I left Ethiopia. Conversely, but it's a sense of just being like really deeply a part of something and understanding like inside and out a culture and a society. And I feel like now I'm spread out. Even US culture and society I'm not so in touch with, right? Because I'm following other ones. And yeah, I would say that's something I miss out on.
Makes sense. From Gabriel, in which language do you think?
English. Unless I'm in Greek, like last week I did an intensive Greek class. It was 5 hours a day.
Not bad.
I think I started thinking in Greek towards the end. And then at the very end, I didn't think at all.
From Lena, what advice would you give to a younger self who just started working with NGOs?
I would say just work 40 hours. Stop at 40.
From Samet, what are some aspects of the Greek culture that you admire or find fascinating?
Aspects of the Greek culture that I find fascinating. I mean, I really like that it seems like to me, and I'm not an expert in Greek culture, that people seem to derive their identities from outside of work. Like it's not so. No, maybe Andreas is like what? I don't know, but people seem to like have lives outside, more lives outside of work, and I think that's important, and I like that. I think that's I don't know about the identity thing, but at least I see that people are working to live as opposed to living to work, which is the case in my country of origin.
Makes sense. Again, from Gabriel, what is your secret to learning languages?
My secret, I mean, there's no secret. There's teachers. Just do what the teacher says. Come on. Do what the teacher says. Watch some movies. Try to speak. Like just be okay feeling like an idiot. Those are my insights.
Another one from Samet was, what were some of the biggest cultural differences you noticed when you first arrived from Greece, coming from Ethiopia?
Oh, people are very direct here. Okay, so I brought my dogs from Ethiopia, and I was walking the dogs in the neighborhood. I didn't they pee on, like, one of them is a male. He pees on, buildings and stuff. And I guess he was peeing on this one building beneath a couple's window or something, and they smelled it. But at one point, I come out of my door and I'm walking the dogs, and they're like, hey, and I couldn't understand them at the time because it was early on, and they're like, like, your dogs, they smell, the pee, it smells, like, stop walking them, like, take them somewhere else, go away, dogs are bad. I don't know, something like that. I'm not sure exactly what they said, but it was definitely about the dogs. And I was like, they were mad. And I was like, oh my God, like, somebody just, like, yelled at me in the street about my dogs and there's that they smell. And like, in Ethiopia, no, everybody is very composed, and it takes a lot for somebody to, like, tell you what they think directly. Like, it's a very indirect, it's a very polite, controlled, reserved culture until it blows up. But it's generally
literally.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question is from Michael. The diversity of places you have been, it's amazing, but it's harder now than 10 years ago to keep the zest and curiosity for traveling and experiencing new places for you?
So this year, I took the year off from work this year. It's 20 years working. I decided to take a break. And, except for the 6 months in Brazil. I traveled. I used Athens as my home base, but I was traveling like 30% of the time, I would say, 25-30%, around Greece and other countries as well. And generally, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it most when I was visiting friends, I think. And then they were kind of taking me
to the
deeper into their culture and into their thoughts, to the food. My Mauritian friend of mine is food fanatic. We basically for 2 weeks, I think I gained 5 kilos in Mauritius because I think I tried like everything, like from her childhood in Mauritius, which was great. And so that was really cool. I think general tourism. I mean, after this year, I'm kind of like, okay, I've traveled. I just want to chill for a year or so and not do so much travel. I think but I still like the idea. I would love to go to like one country a year for 3 weeks or something, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah.
So maybe for closing the episode, do you have any funny, curious story about your time being an expat around?
For this, I would like to engage the audience.
Sure.
With a word. Somebody give me a word. I need an inspiration.
That feels like an improv.
Just in general. Yeah, exactly. It's an improv group.
Banana.
Banana.
You wanna play? You wanted to play.
Okay, another word. This is hard, just to give a random story.
I know your fucking place burned down in Burundi. Like what the?
You want the fire story?
Yeah, I want the fire story.
I'll give you the fire story. Yeah. So, and this is something. If I don't know if some of your audience and listeners are thinking about moving to Africa or are visiting, but it's definitely good, and also just other countries in general, like to understand how comfortable you are with the level of like emergency services you might encounter in a given place. So yeah, back in 2013 or 14, my ex and I, my partner at the time and I, we were just cooking some dinner, and we were planning a trip to see the gorillas in Uganda, I think, or Rwanda. And I remember we had this, just a countertop stove, with the 2 burners. And he was stirring the vegetables and I was stirring the rice or something. And the whole thing just caught fire. I saw like the flame come from like the burner and then it was a gas one, and then go down to the tank. and then a column of fire go up like directly in front of us. Yeah, it was scary. It was pretty scary. And we had a wooden roof. The countertops were wooden as well because we had them custom built. And so it was like column of fire. I was like, fuck. So I ran and I grabbed computers, passports, and cash, and ran outside.
Let my boyfriend be fine.
I don't know. It's just like my first thought. Valuables. And then I told the guard that it's on fire. The house is on fire. The house is on fire. He switched off the electricity, and we ran outside. And then it was like, what do we do? Like nobody. There was no 911 or 112 or whatever, and so we just started calling like the best connected people we knew. And over time, like the house was on fire. There's no fire hydrant or fire extinguisher anyway. But the security service supervisor managed to find a fire extinguisher at a factory nearby. There was a small, like a mill. And then I found one at the hospital. They came, we had these 2 fire extinguishers. Somebody called the fire department. They said, okay, a truck is on the way. I said, okay, truck's not coming. We're worried about these propane tanks blowing up. And the whole town, like a lot of the people in the town were gathering. Neighbors had their pans of water. We're filling up. The house that I was living in had no water at the time. And so we were next door at the house that did have water, filling up people's pots and pans from their house, throwing it on the house fire. The security supervisor was on the roof with the fire extinguisher trying to put it out. Yeah, it's crazy, right? And and then we're like waiting. And then one of my colleagues, she called the governor. She knew the governor of the province. And he was out of town. He was in China on some training trip. So the electrical guy was on some training trip. The guy that knew how to like turn off parts. They wanted to turn off the grid so that like the fire wouldn't spread through electricity. The governor was there. He said, okay, well, I know where the big red switch is. He turned off the power for the entire province.
Okay.
And then the fire company still hasn't come at this point, the fire department. And so, but people went inside the house to loot. The security guards were in the burning house trying to protect my things. Like it's an iPod, it's 2013. It was like, guys, it's an iPod, it's this and that. No, please stop. They wouldn't. So I went in the burning house because I wanted the security guards to leave. And I was like, and I thought, oh my God, I went in there. There's all these people like looking for the cash and the computers and the passports, and they couldn't find them. And I was like, guys, everybody else, get the fuck out of my house. And they left, and sort of, but there's like, it was mostly out. There's still some flames here and there and coals. Anyways, then everything kind of settles down. It's kind of calm. The house is still like embers are burning. And then the fire truck comes. The fire truck pulls up. And they get off the hose to like put the remaining out, and like it was like dribbling out.
Okay.
So they were like, okay, we'll be back. So they were driving around the city looking for water, and we were just like, oh my God, we put out this. It was this whole night. I mean, this was Burundi 10 years ago. But I think in a lot, I remember when I did my backpacking trip in Southeast Asia, I was in Cambodia, and they had received their first proper ambulance, So it's just something to be mindful of for people that are traveling to different countries, et cetera. Like, how much risk tolerance do you personally have? Like, for me, it was okay.
You just lost your house, but it's okay.
Yeah, for me, I was fine. I was like, okay, we managed. I don't mind crisis. But I think, I hear people here in Greece that are freaked out about, the fact that there are no helicopters to rescue you if you're hiking or these sorts of things. So I think risk tolerance this kind of goes back to your question about hacks. I mean, you want to feel safe where you go, right? Like, and it's really only you personally who can decide what is safe to you and what isn't. So yeah, stay safe, folks.
Cool. Thank you so much for this last story of craziness and burning houses.
Sure, why not?
And not having water. Thanks again for
Thank you.
taking
It was
the
nice
time.
having this conversation.
Thanks a lot for all the audience listening and coming today. So yeah, for all the listeners out there, don't miss out on the next episode. There is more stories like Kelly's one coming up. I don't know if so many countries, but some for sure. Until then, keep exploring, stay curious, and see you in the next time.